Stop trying to fix yourself, the Zen secret to true freedom. Part. The architecture of the inner sanctuary. Imagine, for a moment, that your mind is a vast deep-water lake on the surface. The winds of the world are constantly blowing. The criticism of a colleague, the relentless demands of a workplace, the unpredictable chaos of daily logistics. These are the ripples, the whitecaps, and the crashing waves that dominate our perception. We have spent our entire lives identifying with the surface. When the wind blows, we feel agitated. When the storm hits, we feel destroyed. We have been taught that to be in the world is to be at the mercy of the world, a fragile vessel tossed about by forces beyond our control. But today, we begin the process of unlearning this. We begin the journey of diving beneath the surface, where the water is perpetually still, cool, and undisturbed. This is not a retreat from reality. It is a refinement of how you engage with it. The Buddha's great insight, discovered over 2 millennia ago, was not that life lacks challenges, but that our suffering is not inherent to the challenge itself. It is inherent to our resistance. When you wake up tomorrow and the traffic is gridlocked, when the bills arrive, or when someone approaches you with sharp words, you are not being attacked by reality. You are being presented with a mirror. The unshakable peace we are building is a fortress, but not one made of stone or walls. It is an architecture of consciousness, a way of structuring your awareness so that you become the sky, not the clouds. Consider the nature of the mountain metaphor often used in the ancient teachings. A mountain does not move when the winds blow. It does not feel insulted when the rain beats against its rocks. It does not feel pride when the sun illuminates its peaks. It simply exists, grounded in the bedrock of the earth. We have been conditioned to believe that our self-worth, our identity, and our peace must be constantly defended, polished, and validated by external factors. We treat our inner state as if it were a fragile glass figurine that could shatter at any moment. But your essential nature is not glass, it is the bedrock itself. The illusion of fragility is created by the mind's constant projection. We live in a state of if-then. If I have this, then I will be happy. If I change this, then I will be at peace. It creates a phantom version of the future that is perpetually superior to the present. This creates a psychic friction, a constant rubbing against the grain of reality. It is a form of violence we do to our own experience, dismissing the gift of this very breath in favor of an imagined, better version of existence that is essentially a hologram. To see through this illusion is to experience a kind of death. It is the death of the future self you have been cultivating. It is the death of the hope that some future milestone will finally fix the internal sense of lack. This death can be frightening, for it leaves us with nothing but the raw, unvarnished now. But it is the most liberating death you will ever experience, for it is the only way to be born into the reality of your own existence. When you look closely at the there you are running toward, you find it is made of the same stuff as the here. It is made of thoughts, sensations, and perceptions. There is no special magic in the future. There is no enlightenment that is hidden behind a door you haven't opened yet. Everything you are seeking, the depth, the meaning, the joy is present in the fabric of this exact second. You are not waiting for an event, you are waiting for a recognition. You are waiting to see what is already in front of your eyes. This is the Great Awakening. Realizing that the distance you have been trying to bridge is a mental construct. You are not separated from your life by a gap of time, you are the life itself. You are the consciousness that perceives the time, the space, and the experiences. Once this distance collapses, the seeking ends. You don't stop acting, you don't stop working, and you don't stop loving. But you do stop needing the activities to justify your existence. You begin to move with the ease of one who has finally returned home, not by traveling to a distant land, but by finally relaxing into the chair they have been sitting in all along. Part 2, the sanctuary of choice. We live under the heavy, illusory burden of believing that our internal state is a direct, mandatory response to our external conditions. If someone insults you, you are conditioned to believe you must feel anger. If you lose an opportunity, you are conditioned to believe you must feel grief. If you are praised, you are conditioned to believe you must feel pride. But there is a secreta divine geometry hidden in the architecture of human consciousness that we call the gap. Between the stimulus of the world and your response to it, there exists a sanctuary. This is the space where your true power resides. When someone speaks a harsh word, there is a microseconda heartbeat of time before the ego activates its defensive scripts. If you can learn to inhabit that heartbeat, you become the master of your own fate. The sound waves of the criticism hit your ears, but they do not penetrate the sanctuary of your center. You see the anger in the other person as their own weather, their own internal storm, and you choose, with absolute calm, whether you wish to be moved by it. This is not a cold detachment. It is a warm, expansive objectivity. It is the ability to see that your peace is not a fragile object to be protected from the world, but a deep underground spring that is always flowing. No one can steal this spring from you, because it is located within the territory of your own awareness. To harm you, someone would have to reach into your center and alter the very nature of your consciousness, and that is a domain that belongs solely to you. Most of us live our lives as if the gap does not exist. We are trained to be reactive mirrors, instantly reflecting whatever the world throws at us. If the world is angry, we become angry. If the world is rushed, we become rushed. We are puppets dancing on the strings of external circumstances, convinced that we have no choice. But the Buddha's path is the path of reclaiming those strings. When you start to notice the gap, you begin to see that you have options. You are not a machine. You are a conscious entity. When you feel the sudden heat of irritation or the cold spike of anxiety, you can pause, you can feel the ocean and simply say, "Ah, here is the irritation." In that moment of observation, you are not the irritation. You are the witness of the irritation. And in that gap, you are finally free. This is the most fundamental human power, the power of choice. When you are in the gap, you are not defined by your conditioning. You are defined by the possibility of your next action. You are not defined by the critic in your head. You are defined by your ability to notice the voice and choose not to obey it. You move from the reactive, survival-based mind into the creative, presence-based mind. This is the architecture of stillness in action. It is the practice of protecting the quiet so that the quiet can protect you. You can start this by identifying your own trigger points, those moments in your day when you feel the most likely to lose your center. For many, it is the morning rush, the inbox, the commute, or the way a specific person speaks to them. Instead of trying to avoid these moments, use them as your laboratory. When you feel the familiar click of tension, use it as a trigger to stop. Drop your shoulders away from your ears, unclench your jaw. Take one conscious, deep breath into the belly. In that one breath, you are breaking the chain of conditioned reactivity. You are teaching your nervous system that it is not in an emergency. You are moving from a state of being triggered into a state of being present. You are moving from the prison of the reaction into the vast, open, and liberating territory of your own choosing. Part the master and the mirror. Consider the legend of Master Hakuin. When he was falsely accused of fathering a child and subsequently shunned by his entire village, he did not launch a campaign of self-defense. Nor did he allow his heart to harden in resentment. He accepted the role of the child's caregiver with the same equanimity he had previously shown in his silent meditation. He understood that his reputation was a social construct, a soap bubble that could be popped by a single lie or a misplaced rumor. But his character, the bedrock of his peace, was not a social construct. It was real, it was untouchable, and it was entirely independent of the villagers' opinion. When the truth finally emerged and the villagers returned to him, begging for forgiveness, he did not gloat, nor did he feel vindicated. He simply offered the phrase, "Is that so?" This is the ultimate expression of inner sovereignty. To be unshaken by condemnation is difficult, but to be equally unshaken by praise is the mark of a true sage. Praise is just as much a trap as criticism. Both are hooks designed to pull you out of your center and into the fickle, shifting current of public opinion. By staying rooted in your own truth, you become the tree that sways in the wind, but never leaves the earth. We often believe that our self-worth is something we negotiate with the world. We look for validation in the approval of our peers, the recognition of our bosses, and the acceptance of our community. But when you make your well-being dependent on the external, you have effectively handed the keys to your happiness to people who do not have your best interests at heart. You have become a client of a reality you do not control. Master Hakuin's "Is that so?" is not a sign of indifference, it is a sign of radical clarity. It recognizes that the world's version of reality is often based on incomplete information and emotional projections. When you are criticized, you have a choice. You can spend your limited, precious energy defending a version of yourself that doesn't even exist in the mind of the critic, or you can meet the situation with unshakable presence. When you stop needing the world to see you as good, you become free to actually be good. When you stop needing the world to see you as successful, you become free to actually be effective. The mirror of the world is always distorted, always changing, always reflecting its own biases. If you look into that mirror to find out who you are, you will only see a distorted image. To live without the need for external validation is to build an architecture of inner integrity. You know who you are, not because someone told you, but because you have done the work of being present with your own intentions. You know your worth, not because of your achievements, but because you recognize your inherent nature as consciousness. This is the bedrock that allows you to walk through the fire of judgment and emerge without a single singe mark on your soul. You are no longer a person who is affected by the weather of the world. You are the one who watches the weather pass, holding the quiet, steady light of your own truth. Part I of the Laboratory of Mindfulness. Mindfulness is the process of building the infrastructure of this sanctuary. It is not merely a state of calmness or a temporary escape from the pressures of modern life. It is the surgical precision of observing the mind without merging with it. Most of us go through our days in a state of unconscious identification. We believe we are our thoughts. We believe we are our emotions. And we believe we are the story our minds tell us about our situation. When you feel the defensive heat rising in your chest during a high-stakes meeting, you are not failing. You are being given a laboratory sample. You are being shown exactly where your attachments live and where your armor is most brittle. By observing the physiological reaction, the tightening of the muscles, the shallowing of the breath, the narrowing of focus, you effectively de-identify from the drama. You are no longer the person having the argument, you are the scientist observing the biological reaction to conflict. This shift in perspective is transformative. It drains the power from the emotional surge. When you name the emotion, this is fear, this is pride, this is hurt, you are effectively stepping out of the path of the oncoming train. You are moving from the position of the victim into the position of the observer. Meditation, in this architecture, is the practice of repeatedly returning to the center. Every time your mind wanders to the past, to a grievance, to the should have been, you are training the neural pathways of peace. You are proving to your nervous system that stillness is a viable, safe, and preferred state. It is not about silencing the mind, which is an impossible task, but about changing your relationship to the noise. You start to see the mind as a beautiful, albeit chaotic, instrument like a radio that sometimes picks up static. You learn to turn the dial. As you develop this habit of observation, you begin to distinguish between productive thought and conditioned rumination. Productive thought is the tool you use to solve problems, plan your day, and engage with the world. Conditioned rumination is the endless loop of worry, judgment, and self-doubt that serves no purpose other than to drain your energy. Mindfulness allows you to catch the rumination early, before it gathers the momentum of a landslide. You see it for what it is, a passing pattern, a mental habit, and you let it go. Over time, this becomes your default. You no longer have to struggle to reach peace, you simply fall into it. You find that you can be working on a complex project, dealing with difficult personalities, and navigating life's inherent chaos, all while maintaining a steady, grounded awareness of your own center. You start to see the clouds of your thoughts as they arise, and you recognize them for what they are. Ephemeral, non-permanent, and ultimately unable to stain the clear blue sky of your essential nature. You are the sky, and the thoughts are just the weather. And once you know you are the sky, the weather loses its power to terrify you. You are building a mind that can handle anything, not by controlling the world, but by mastering the laboratory of your own awareness. Part V, the world as a classroom. If you view the world as a place that exists primarily to provide you with comfort, recognition, or stability, you will be perpetually disappointed. The nature of the world is change, friction, and unpredictability. It is not designed to accommodate your desire for a quiet life. However, If you flip this perspective, you view the world as a vast, complex, and infinitely resourceful classroom. You will never again be bored, victimized, or truly offended. Every person you encounter, every setback you face, and every triumph you achieve becomes a lesson in the curriculum of your own awakening. In this classroom, the difficult people are often your most advanced instructors. The irritable clerk who tests your patience is not an obstacle, they are a trainer in the art of equanimity. The arrogant colleague who triggers your insecurity is not a villain, they are a mirror, showing you the exact location of your own egoic wounds. When you approach interaction with this mindset, you stop being a target for their behavior. Instead, you become an investigator of your own responses. You ask yourself, what is this situation teaching me about my own capacity for compassion? Where am I still holding on to the need for approval? This shift is the cornerstone of right understanding. It allows you to move through life with a sense of curiosity rather than defensiveness. When you stop seeing people as obstacles to your success or threats to your peace, you start to see them as fellow travelers, people who are also suffering, also struggling, and also seeking their own version of happiness. Behind every mask of anger, arrogance, or indifference is a person with their own hopes, fears, and internal battles. When you cultivate this recognition, the hardness of your own heart begins to melt, replaced by a spacious, inclusive compassion. This perspective makes it impossible to be truly offended. Offense is a choice made by the ego, a way to declare yourself right and the other person wrong. But in a classroom, there is no right or wrong. There is only the opportunity to learn. When someone says something hurtful, you can observe the sting without accepting the narrative. You can acknowledge the hurt, see the ignorance or pain that motivated the speaker, and move on without needing to retaliate. You are no longer playing the game of social dominance. You are playing the game of personal mastery. Every situation offers lessons in self-reliance, discernment, and empathy. The indifferent stranger teaches you that your peace does not depend on being noticed. The unexpected loss teaches you about the non-permanence of all things. The moment of joy teaches you about the beauty of simple presence. When you see the world as your classroom, you become a student of everything. You start to see patterns in human behavior. You begin to understand the mechanics of your own suffering. And you find that even the most mundane days are filled with the potential for profound insight. This is the alchemy of wisdom. It turns the dross of daily life, the mundane chores, the social obligations, the inevitable conflicts to the gold of spiritual maturity. You are no longer waiting for the perfect circumstances to be peaceful. You are using the circumstances you have, exactly as they are, to forge a character that is resilient, insightful, and kind. You are realizing that you do not need the world to change you, only need to change the way you read the lessons it provides. And once you begin to learn from every moment, you will find that you have graduated from the school of suffering and entered the school of freedom. Part V, the river of letting go. We cling to outcomes as if our very survival depended on them. We want the conversation to go a certain way, the project to be a resounding success, the person to be appreciative, the future to be secure. But the universe is a river, and your attempt to freeze it in place is the primary cause of all your exhaustion. Letting go is not about apathy or surrendering your agency, it is about the wisdom of the archer. An archer who is obsessed with hitting the bullseye will often miss because their hand is too tight, their aim too desperate, and their muscles too tense. An archer who focuses on the process, the breath, the alignment, and the tension of the bow will hit the target with a natural, effortless grace. Trust the flow. Trust that the intelligence of your own consciousness is far greater than the narrow, frantic intelligence of your ego. When you stop trying to force the universe into your preferred shape, you allow the universe to present you with possibilities you never could have imagined. This is the sacred trust of a life lived in alignment with the truth. You do your best, you show up with your full integrity, you execute your tasks with excellence, and then you open your hands. If the sand stays, it stays. If it slips away, you have hands that are now free to reach for something else. The practice of non-attachment begins with noticing the subtle kink in your nervous system when things do not go your way. It is that feeling of disappointment, that sharp intake of breath, that immediate mental revision of what should have happened. When you feel this, stop. Recognize that this is the moment of suffering. You are suffering because you are refusing to accept the current reality, preferring instead to live in a hologram of what you wanted reality to be. By letting go of the demand that reality be different, you instantly return to the present. You regain your bandwidth. You become available again. This requires a profound kind of courage. It requires the willingness to be wrong, the willingness to lose, and the willingness to start over. It is a terrifying prospect for the ego, which wants to be a solid, unchanging, recognizable monument. But for the soul, it is the only way to be free. The soul does not want to be a monument, it wants to be a participant in the dance. When you stop holding on to the me you think you are, and the results you think you need, you discover that you are something much larger, something that can survive any loss and still remain whole. This is the alchemy of release. When you release the demand for a specific outcome, you don't become passive, you become clear. You think more logically, you act more decisively, and you navigate obstacles with more dexterity. When you remove the desperate edge from your desires, you actually become more effective. People are naturally drawn to those who are secure enough to let go. You become a person who can handle the volatility of the world without being destroyed by it. You are building an architecture of inner freedom, layer by layer, choice by choice. You are realizing that true security does not come from what you have, but from what you area vast, spacious, and resilient awareness. You are learning that the river will take you where you need to go, provided you stop trying to swim upstream against the currents of reality. You are learning that you are the river, the current, and the observer on the bank all at once. And in that realization, you find the only true rest that exists, the rest of one who has finally stopped fighting with life and has begun to participate in it with joy, with courage, and with an open heart. Part V. The architecture of integrity living in alignment. Integrity is not just a moral code, it is a structural necessity for a peaceful mind. We often treat ethics as a set of rules imposed from the outside social contracts, religious dictates, or workplace policies. But in the architecture of the awakened mind, ethics are the alignment of your internal truth with your external action. When there is a fracture between who you are on the inside and what you project on the outside, you create a state of psychic dissonance. You are living a lie, and that lie consumes a massive amount of your mental bandwidth. It forces you to constantly manage your image, remember your deceptions, and suppress your true voice. True integrity is the act of becoming transparent. It is the decision that your internal home and your external marketplace are the same place. When you live with integrity, you no longer have to waste energy on performance. You don't have to worry about who is watching, because you are the same person in the boardroom, in the grocery store, and in the silence of your own room. This consistency creates a powerful form of internal stability. It creates a solid foundation that no criticism can crack, because you are not hiding anything. You are not vulnerable to being exposed, because you are already fully present and honest. This requires the courage of self-confrontation. It means looking at the parts of yourself that you have hidden, the compromises you have made to gain approval, and the corners you have cut to avoid discomfort. These compromises are the cracks in your foundation. To build a structure that can withstand the storms of life, you must fill these cracks with the concrete of truth. You must be willing to speak your reality, even when it is inconvenient. You must be willing to honor your word, even when it costs you. You must be willing to be seen for who you are, even when you fear that being seen might lead to judgment. When you act with integrity, you are not just following rules. You are aligning your personal energy with the natural laws of cause and effect, the law of karma. Every action you take is a seed. If you plant seeds of deceit, you will eventually have to harvest the crop of paranoia and complication. If you plant seeds of honesty and respect, you will eventually harvest the crop of trust and peace. This is not a mystical belief, it is a practical observation of human systems. People gravitate toward those who are reliable. Opportunities naturally flow to those who are consistent. Life becomes exponentially simpler when you remove the complexity of dishonesty. This also means treating others with a level of respect that transcends whether they deserve it. When you are kind to a difficult person, You are not doing it because they have earned your kindness. You are doing it because you are a kind person. Your integrity is not contingent on their behavior. It is a reflection of your own internal architecture. By maintaining this, you hold on to your power in every situation. You realize that you cannot be made to be cruel, and you cannot be forced to be dishonest. These are your choices, and you own them entirely. Living in alignment also means aligning your daily habits with your deeper values. If you value presence but spend all day in a state of frantic distraction, you are out of alignment. If you value kindness but spend your energy complaining and gossiping, you are out of alignment. The architecture of integrity asks you to audit your days. Does this action serve the person I am becoming? Does this commitment help me stand taller? Or does it force me to crouch? When you start to prune away the activities and habits that do not serve your core truth, you find that your life becomes lean, focused, and powerful. You stop being a person of many fragments and start being a person of one focus. That is the strength of a soul that is no longer at war with itself. Part V, the architecture of forgiveness, the surgery of the soul. Forgiveness is perhaps the most misunderstood concept in the human experience. We often think it means condoning the behavior of those who have hurt us, or that it is a gift we grant to someone else to absolve them of their sins. We withhold it as a form of currency, waiting for the other party to apologize or change before we release our grip on the resentment. But the true nature of forgiveness is much more internal and surgical. It is not a gift you give to someone else. It is an act of liberation you perform on yourself. When you hold on to resentment, you are drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. You are carrying the weight of the past into every room you enter, allowing a ghost from a previous chapter to dictate the quality of your present-day relationships. Resentment is a form of psychic clutter, a tab in your browser that never closes, consistently draining your battery and slowing down your system. Forgiveness is the act of deleting the file. It is the recognition that the past is a finished story, and that keeping it alive in your memory does not change what happened. It only ensures that the injury continues to occur in the present. To forgive is not to say that what happened was okay. It is to say, I am no longer willing to allow this event to define my future. It is the act of reclaiming the energy you have been wasting on hatred, regret, or the desire for revenge, and reinvesting it in your own growth. Whenever the memory of a betrayal or an injustice rises to the surface, the practice is not to feed it with rumination. Instead, you acknowledge the injury, you feel the sting of it, you honor the hurt you experienced, and then you consciously choose to drop it. You visualize the memory as a heavy stone you have been carrying, and you simply open your hand. You can begin this practice by identifying the unpaid debts you are still carrying. Are you waiting for an apology that will never come? Are you waiting for someone to acknowledge the pain they caused you? When you tie your freedom to the behavior of someone else, you are making yourself a prisoner of their limitations. Forgiveness is the ultimate boundary. It is the statement that you have extracted all the learning you can from the experience, and you are now finished with it. You are cutting the cord. If you struggle to forgive, start with the most difficult person, yourself. We often harbor more resentment toward our own past selves for the mistakes we made, the opportunities we squandered, the times we were weak than we do toward any external enemy. We treat our past self as if they were a stranger who betrayed us. But your past self was doing the best they could with the information and the tools they had at the time. They were operating from a place of fear or ignorance or pain, just as you are now. When you forgive your past self, you are finally integrating the fragmented pieces of your history. You are becoming a whole person again, rather than a person haunted by the ghosts of their own previous iterations. This is the alchemy of release. When you forgive, the landscape of your mind suddenly becomes much more spacious. The energy that was tied up in the defensive crouch of resentment is suddenly free. You have more capacity for joy, more bandwidth for presence, and more courage to engage with the world as it is, rather than as you fear it might become. Forgiveness is not an on-time event, it is a discipline. It is a muscle that strengthens with every act of letting go. Every time you refuse to be drawn into the narrative of your own grievance, you are exercising your freedom. You are choosing to be a person who is defined by their future potential, not their past injuries. You are walking out of the prison of your own mind, and you are finally free to begin the rest of your life. This is the structural integrity of a liberated soulone that no longer carries the burden of yesterday, but moves forward with the lightness of true unencumbered being. Part X. The architecture of joy, discipline of attention. We are conditioned by our culture to believe that joy is a prize, something we stumble upon when the external stars align, when the promotion finally arrives, or when the perfect external circumstances are achieved. We treat joy as an event, a transient reward for successful navigation of the world. But this view is fundamentally flawed. Joy is not an event, it is a discipline of attention. It is the natural temperature of the human heart when it is not being frozen by the expectations of the ego or the frantic search for more. In the midst of the most difficult seasons of life, the practitioner realizes that joy is the only thing that can break the cycle of self-judgment. It is not that his circumstances changed, the isolation was still harsh, the memories still painful, but he began to notice that joy was always present in the periphery, waiting for an invitation. Gratitude is that invitation. We often make the mistake of thinking that we should be grateful after we have received something good. But this is backward. Gratitude is not a response to a positive outcome. It is a lens through which you view reality. When you practice gratitude, you are actively training your brain to scan for the beauty, the grace, and the small, quiet miracles that exist in every single moment. This is the geometry of joy. It exists in the space between the expectation and the reality. When you expect nothing, everything you receive becomes a gift. When you expect everything, everything feels like a disappointment. To cultivate the architecture of joy, you must start with the micro-gratitudes. Stop looking for the epic. Look for the way the morning light catches the dust in the air. Look for the way your body breathes without you having to ask it to. Look for the kindness of a stranger, the reliability of the floor beneath your feet, the simple fact that you have the capacity to read these words. This is not a form of toxic positivity. It is not about ignoring the difficulties of your life or papering over your pain with empty platitudes. It is about holding the reality of your suffering alongside the reality of your blessings. You can be in pain and still be grateful for the sunset. You can be grieving and still appreciate the taste of water. This dual awareness is the hallmark of a mature, integrated soul. The practice is simple. Every night, before you close your eyes, anchor your awareness in 3 things that occurred during the day that you are thankful for. Not the big things, the promotion, the vacation, but the small, transient, easily missed things. The smell of rain, the sound of a laugh, the feeling of safety in your own bed. By doing this, you are teaching your nervous system to prioritize the positive. You are effectively rewiring your brain to see the abundance that is already present in your life. You are shifting your internal baseline from a state of deficit to a state of sufficiency. Joy is the natural state of a consciousness that is no longer preoccupied with the need to be more. When you realize that you are already enough and that the world is already filled with enough, joy ceases to be a luxury and becomes your baseline. This joy is not the manic, high-energy excitement that burns out quickly. It is a quiet, steady, sturdy presence. It is the joy of being. It is the joy of participating. It is the joy of knowing that, no matter what happens, you have the capacity to find something beautiful in the wreckage. As you cultivate this gratitude, you will find that the world begins to change around you. You stop seeing a world that is doing things to you, and you start seeing a world that is inviting you in. You stop being a consumer of experiences and start being a co-creator of beauty. You are no longer chasing the sunshine, you are becoming the light. And in that shift, you discover that the joy you were looking for was never a destination at Allet, was the very frequency of the life you were already living. You are the blooming, the wilting, and the seeds waiting for the next rain. You are the process, and in that you are perfectly, entirely enough. Part X, the architecture of service, the return to the marketplace. For years, the practitioner lived in the sanctuary of his retreat, honing his awareness, dissolving his attachments, and mastering the internal landscape of his own mind. He had traveled as far as a person could go into the interior, seeking the roots of his own freedom. Yet he eventually reached a pivotal realization. The final test of his liberation was not how well he could sit in silence, but how well he could return to the noise. There is a tradition in many wisdom paths often called the return to the marketplace. It is the profound realization that wisdom serves no purpose if it is kept in a vacuum. The point of your practicing meditation, the self-compassion, the boundaries, the forgiveness is not to make you a better person in isolation. It is to make you a more capable, more present, and more effective participant in the collective life of humanity. Service is the natural byproduct of an awakened mind. When you stop being consumed by the devil voice in your head, the one that demands constant validation, the one that whispers stories of inadequacy, the one that keeps you in a state of chronic defensive posture, you naturally become aware of the needs of others. The energy you once spent on the theater of your own ego becomes available to the world. Service does not have to mean a grand, heroic sacrifice. It does not mean you have to quit your job, sell your belongings, or become a saint. Service is found in the way you interact with the person sitting across from you. It is found in the quality of your attention, when you show up to a meeting as a fully present human being. Having done the work to center yourself, having practiced the art of radical listening, and having cultivated the patience of the gap, you are performing an act of service. You are introducing a quality of calm into a chaotic environment. You are becoming a stabilizing presence for those around you. People are hungry for presence in a world of fragmented, distracted, and anxious individuals. A person who is truly, deeply, and unconditionally here is a beacon. To serve is to offer your presence as a refuge. When you are listening to someone, you are saying, "I am here, and you are not alone." When you handle a conflict with integrity and grace, you are saying, "There is a different way to be in the world." When you act with kindness, you are saying, "You are seen, and you are valued." You are a cell in the larger body of humanity. When you heal your own suffering, you are literally lowering the aggregate amount of pain in the system. When you practice presence, you are making it easier for others to be present. You are part of an invisible, silent network of people who are choosing awareness over unconsciousness and kindness over violence. The architecture of your life is not a private matter, it is a social one. Every internal choice you make creates an external ripple. Every time you choose to breathe in the gap, you are changing the atmosphere of the room you are in. Every time you choose compassion over judgment, you are shifting the culture of your workplace, your family, and your community. As you integrate this into your daily life, do not overthink your contribution. You do not need to calculate your impact. Just show up. Bring your whole, messy, beautiful, awakened self to the table. Offer your listening. Offer your patience. Offer your integrity. The practitioner eventually returned to the world not as a teacher, but as a student of the marketplace. He worked, he struggled, he engaged, and he failed, just like everyone else. But he did so with a heart that had found its rest. He had discovered that the refuge he was looking for was not a place, but a way of being that was expansive enough to hold the beauty and the suffering of the world and still remain at peace. You are not arriving at a finish line. You are arriving at the beginning of your life as a contributor. You are finally ready to take the wisdom you have found in the silence and translate it into the language of action. You are ready to be the presence that the world is so desperately waiting for. You are ready to serve. Parchi, the architecture of legacy being the sky for others. As you walk through the marketplace of your own life, you may begin to wonder, what remains? If we are all just weather patterns moving through the vast, empty sky of consciousness, what are we actually building? What is the legacy of a person who has stopped striving for the temporary more? The final lesson of the path is the realization that the greatest legacy is not what you leave behind in monuments or records, but what you are while you are here. Legacy is not a stone monument. It is the quality of your resonance. Every interaction you have, every choice you make to be kind when it would be easier to be indifferent. Every time you hold space for someone who is struggling, these are the vibrations you leave in the world. You are building an architecture of impact that exists not in mortar and brick, but in the hearts and nervous systems of everyone you encounter. When you have done the work of coming home to yourself, your presence becomes a silent permission slip for others to do the same. By being a person who can sit with their own discomfort, You teach others that it is safe to be human. By being a person who listens without judgment, you teach others that they are worthy of being heard. By being a person who forgives, you teach others that the chain of resentment can be broken. You are the sky for those around you. When the people in your life are caught in the thunderstorms of their own ego, their own anxiety, and their own search for more, you can be the vast, spacious, calm environment that contains their weather. You do not need to fix them. You do not need to change them. You only need to remain present and steady. This is the most powerful form of service. You are not imposing your wisdom, you are embodying it. You are showing that peace is possible, even in the middle of the mess. And that, more than any lecture or advice, is what actually changes the world. As you look forward to the rest of your life, let go of the need to calculate your legacy. Let go of the need to leave a mark that is visible to the masses. The most meaningful marks are the ones that are invisible. The gentle shift in a child's confidence, the healing of a broken relationship, the steadying of a friend's heart in a moment of crisis. You are building a legacy of awareness. Every moment you spend awake is a victory against the unconscious drift of the modern world. Every moment you spend choosing presence is a contribution to the sanity of the whole. You are already whole. You are already free. And the work of your life is simply to live from that truth, one breath at a time. The monastery was a place of preparation, but the world is the place of practice. The silence was the teacher, but the noise is the test. So go back to your desk, back to your relationships, back to your daily tasks, but do not go back the same. Go back as the witness. Go back as the sky. Go back as the person who knows that no matter what happens, no matter what storms arise in the foreground of your experience, the vast, luminous space of your own consciousness remains untouched, unshakable, and eternally at home. The journey you began when you started. This exploration is not a journey to a destination. It is a journey of homecoming. You have been everywhere searching for what was already yours. You have been everything, trying to become what you already are now. You can finally stop. You can sit down, take a deep, full breath, and recognize that everything you have been looking for, the peace, the wholeness, the freedom, has been here. In the quiet, spacious, and eternal present, waiting for you to come home. Welcome back. Welcome to the life you were always meant to live. Welcome to yourself. Part I. The architecture of memory, restoring the past. Memory is not a library of objective facts, it is a creative workshop. We mistakenly believe that our past is a fixed monument, a stone pillar that supports the house of our present. But memory is fluid, highly susceptible to the mood, the needs, and the filters of the current moment. When you are in a state of scarcity, your memory pulls up every time you have failed or been rejected. When you are in a state of expansion, the same memory bank provides you with examples of resilience and triumph. The monk discovered that he was the curator of his own museum. He had been spending decades dusting off the artifacts of his pain, polishing them until they looked more real than his present experience. He realized that restoring is not about lying to oneself. It is about choosing which narrative to highlight. We are all haunted by the ghosts of our past mistakes. But these ghosts only have the power we give them through constant revisitation. 2. Restore is to approach the past with the perspective of the witness. You look at your younger self, the one who made the mistake, not with the harsh eyes of a judge, but with the compassionate eyes of a mentor. You see the context, you see the fear, you see the limitation. You realize that you were a different person then, navigating a map that was incomplete. By changing the narrative, you change the emotional weight the memory carries. The stone in your hand loses its density. It becomes a pebble, and then it becomes dust. This is the architecture of memory. You are building a history that serves your growth, rather than one that shackles your potential. You aren't deleting the past. You are integrating it into a narrative of profound transformation. Every setback is rewritten as a necessary lesson. Every trauma is repositioned as a crucible that forged your current strength. By reclaiming the narrative, you are no longer a victim of what happened to you, but the conscious author of what you become because of it. This practice prevents the past from bleeding into the future, ensuring that every morning you wake up with a clean slate, written in the ink of your own conscious choice. Part. The architecture of desire, aligning with the natural flow. Desire is the engine of the universe. It is the invisible force that pulls the seed toward the light and the tides toward the moon. We have been taught by many traditions to see desire as the in my something to be extinguished through asceticism or moral restraint, as if craving were a toxin that poisons the spirit. But desire is not the problem. The problem is the grasping that follows the desire. The practitioner realized that the hunger for more success, more approval, more material, comfort was a distortion of the natural, healthy hunger for expansion. Expansion is the very nature of life. It is the way of the universe to express its infinite complexity. When you desire, you are participating in that creative expression. The distortion occurs when you believe that the attainment of the specific object of your desire is the only way you will ever be complete. This makes your desire a hostage-taking event. You hold your own peace hostage until the object is achieved. The architecture of desire is based on the principle of non-grasping. You can desire the promotion, the creative breakthrough, or the deep human connection. But you hold it loosely. You pursue it with excellence, with passion, and with strategy. But you do not allow your internal state to be contingent upon it. You are, in essence, enjoying the ride while you are moving toward the destination. You are satisfied with the current, while remaining eager for the sea. This is a subtle, high-level skill. It requires you to know exactly what you want, but not to need it for your survival or your sense of self. When you remove the desperate edge from your ambition, you actually become exponentially more effective. You think more clearly. You are more charismatic. You are more resilient. You move from the energy of the beggar, who is always pleading with reality to give them what they lack, to the energy of the creator, who is simply manifesting what is already latent in their potential. To live in this state is to engage with life with purposeful detachment. You work hard because that is your nature, not because you are trying to fill a hole inside you. You engage with your goals with intensity, but you never confuse your goal with your identity. If you reach the goal, you celebrate. If you do not, you learn. Because your peace was never on the line, you are never truly defeated. You are always playing, always creating, and always growing. This is the secret of those who seem to achieve much while remaining fundamentally calm. They are fueled by the desire to express, not the need to possess. They have aligned themselves with the flow of the river, and they find that the river carries them exactly where they need to go. The architecture of solitude, the laboratory of the self. We live in an age of hyperconnectivity, where the constant buzz of digital life makes us fear the very idea of being alone. We have made ourselves always on, tethered by the digital umbilical cords of our devices, terrified of a single quiet moment where we might be left to the sound of our own mind. But we must distinguish between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a state of being starved for connection. It is the ache of the social animal who feels disconnected from the herd. Solitude, however, is the state of being full of oneself. It is the practice of being your own companion. The practitioner's retreat was, at its core, a laboratory of solitude. He found that in the absence of the other, the person to impress, the person to argue with, the person to define himself against, the ego began to starve. It had no material to work with. It could no longer perform. And when the performance stopped, the actor dropped his mask. He found that he had spent his entire life reacting to the expectations of others. And in the silence, he was finally forced to ask, who is the one listening to all this noise? Solitude is the architecture of the self. It is in the quiet, empty spaces that you finally hear the true frequency of your own being. It is where you face the boredom, the anxiety, and the existential dread that you usually drown out with busyness. But if you sit with these feelings, if you treat them not as enemies but as guests, you eventually reach the bedrock. Below the noise, below the roles, below the masks, there is a core of stillness that is absolutely unshakable. You don't need a mountain retreat to find this. You can build this architecture into your day. You can find pockets of solitude: a walk without music, a morning cup of coffee without the phone, a commute where you simply sit with your thoughts. Use these pockets to audit your inner state. Are you present? Are you at home? Are you the sky? When you start to seek out these moments, you will notice that the quality of your presence changes. You become a person who can sit with discomfort, a person who can listen to their own inner guidance. and a person who is not easily manipulated by the frantic pace of the world. You move from a state of external dependence to internal independence. You realize that you have a source of wisdom that does not come from a book, a mentor, or an app. It comes from the quiet center that has been there all along. The more you cultivate this, the less you will need the validation of the world to feel solid. You will become a person who can stand alone. And in that standing, you will become a person who can truly stand with others, not out of a need for them, but out of a genuine desire to connect. Part X. The architecture of failure falling upward. Failure is arguably the greatest teacher in the human experience, provided we have the structural framework to process it correctly. In our contemporary culture, failure is almost universally treated as a final verdict on our worth. We are taught that if we fail at a project, a relationship, or a business endeavor, we are a failure. This binary thinking, success or ruin, is the primary cause of our collective anxiety. But in the architecture of the awakened mind, failure is simply information. It is the raw data point that tells you your strategy was misaligned, not that your value was insufficient. To fall upward is to treat every collapse as a necessary, calibrated step in the evolution of your own competence. The practitioner, in his return to the marketplace, faced his fair share of disasters. He lost money. He damaged professional alliances. He made decisions that led to total outcomes he hadn't anticipated. But he stopped looking at these events through the lens of tragedy. He began to look at them as field testing. He realized that the only way to find the actual limits of his capacity was to push until the structure snapped. When you snap, you learn exactly where the structural weakness lies. You repair it, you reinforce it, you come back stronger, not by ignoring the damage, but by using it to build a more resilient foundation. This is the architecture of resilience. It turns your life into a continuous improvement cycle, where the version of you is never a static, completed object, but a dynamic, evolving process constantly being refined by the reality of your engagement. Do not fear the breakdown. The breakdown is often the breakthrough in disguise. It is the ego realizing it cannot control the outcome, and the witness stepping in to manage the aftermath. If you have failed recently, celebrate the clarity it has provided. You have just been given a masterclass in how the world actually works. You have been humbled, which is the most powerful starting point for any significant growth. You are now prepared to build something that actually lasts, because you are building it on the truth of what doesn't work, rather than the fragile hope of what you wished would work. When you lose the fear of failure, you gain the freedom to innovate. You become bold. You take the risks that others avoid because they are too terrified of the social stigma of losing. You recognize that the only true failure is the failure to engage, a failure to try, the failure to learn, and the failure to evolve. As long as you are moving, learning, and refining your architecture, you are succeeding. You are falling, yes, but you are falling in the right direction, forward and upward, toward a more conscious and capable version of yourself. Parts V. The architecture of connection, the art of interbeing. We have spent much of our time exploring the interior fortress, the sanctuary of the self. But we must now turn our gaze to the bridges we build to others. Many who pursue a path of inner peace eventually fall into the trap of isolation. They view the world as a source of disturbance and retreat into a shell of self-sufficiency. But this is a misunderstanding of the path. True sovereignty does not lead to disconnection. It leads to a deeper, more refined capacity for intimacy. The practitioner discovered that the more grounded he became in his own sky, the more he could appreciate the unique weather of every person he encountered. He stopped trying to change others to fit his peace, and instead learned to hold space for them as they were. This is the architecture of interbeing. It is the realization that your existence is not a solitary event, but a constant, fluid conversation with everyone around you. The most profound way to connect is through the practice of radical listening. Most people do not listen to understand, they listen to respond, to judge, or to prepare their next move in the conversation. They are constantly filtering the other person's words through the lens of their own ego. Radical listening is the act of silencing that filter. It is the act of providing the other person with your complete, undivided attention, as if they were the only person in the universe at that moment. When you listen this way, You are doing more than exchanging information. You are offering a safe harbor. You are allowing the other person to feel fully seen. And in that feeling, they often find the clarity they couldn't reach on their own. Connection also requires the courage of vulnerability. We spend so much energy projecting an image of strength, the invulnerable self, that we create distance between ourselves and others. We are terrified that if someone sees our cracks, they will stop respecting us. But the irony is that it is exactly through our cracks that the light of connection enters. When you are willing to admit when you are confused, hurt, or afraid, you give others the permission to be honest about their own humanity. You break the social contract of constant performance and invite the other person into a real, authentic relationship. This is the architecture of trust. It is built brick by brick through small acts of honesty, consistency, and kindness. It is a structure that is tested by conflict, not defined by the absence of it. In a healthy architecture of connection, conflict is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of engagement. It is an opportunity to negotiate your boundaries, express your needs, and deepen your understanding of one another. When you enter a disagreement with the intention of winning, you destroy the bridge. But when you enter a disagreement with the intention of understanding, you reinforce it. You are never a solitary pillar. You are part of a vast interconnected network of lives. Every person you influence, every heart you touch, and every relationship you nurture is an extension of your own architecture. By choosing to connect with compassion and integrity, you are strengthening the social fabric of the entire world. You are helping to build a reality where peace is not a private luxury, but a shared experience. And this ultimately is the highest form of mastery, to be at peace within yourself and to be a source of peace for everyone you touch. Part X5. The architecture of time living in the eternal. Now we have long treated time as a resource to be managed, a finite currency to be spent, saved, or invested. We map our days by the clock, measuring our worth by our productivity, and our progress by the milestones we reach. But this linear obsession with getting to the next point is precisely what keeps us from the actual substance of our lives. The monk eventually realized that time is not a line, it is a sphere. The past is not behind us, and the future is not ahead of us. They are both holographic projections appearing within the vast, eternal present of our awareness. When you are fully present, time loses its weight. You may have noticed this in moments of deep flow or profound beauty. The clock keeps ticking, but the psychological experience of time vanishes. You are simply being. This is the architecture of the eternal now. It is the practice of folding the future and the past into the center of the current moment. When you are planning for the future, you do it from the clarity of the present, not from the anxiety of the future. When you reflect on the past, you do it from the wisdom of the present, not from the regret of the past. You are no longer spending your life, you are experiencing it. The anxiety of modern life is almost entirely an anxiety about the next moment, the next meeting, the next deadline, the next crisis. But that moment does not exist yet. It is a mental construct, a blueprint. When you catch yourself vibrating with the tension of what's next, use it as a signal to return to the breath. The breath is the tether to the now. It is the only thing that is always happening in the present tense. By focusing on the physical sensation of breathing, you collapse the distance between your consciousness and the reality of the current second. This practice transforms your relationship with work and responsibility. You are still efficient, perhaps even more so, because you are no longer distracted by the phantom fears of the future. You bring your full, undivided attention to the task at hand. You are not multitasking. You are unitasking. You are giving yourself completely to the email, the conversation, or the project. This is the quality of excellence that comes from presence. When you are fully in the now, you are not worried about the quality of the work or the opinion of your peers. You are simply engaged in the mastery of the current movement. This approach also fundamentally changes how you age. You stop being a person who is running out of time and start being a person who is expanding into time. You recognize that you don't need 1,000 years to find peace, you only need this one single breath. You find that you have all the time you need because the now is infinite. It contains everything, all your memories, all your possibilities, and all your potential within its quiet, spacious center. By letting go of the desperate race against the clock, you actually reclaim the time you were previously losing to worry. You are no longer a servant of the calendar, you are the master of the moment. And in that, you find that life is not something you are rushing through, but something you are finally truly inhabiting. Part the architecture of equilibrium, navigating the extremes. In the landscape of the human experience, we often find ourselves oscillating between two destructive poles: the pole of cold, detached intellectualism, and the pole of burning, reactive emotionalism. We either try to think our way out of our problems, turning our lives into a sterile, logical equation, or we allow ourselves to be consumed by the fire of our feelings, turning our lives into a volatile, unpredictable drama. The architecture of equilibrium is the art of standing exactly in the center of these two forces, allowing the warmth of the heart to inform the cold logic of the mind. The practitioner learned that to be truly unshakable does not mean to be unfeeling. It means to be fully feeling without being owned by the feeling. When he felt anger, he did not analyze it away with intellectual excuses, nor did he lash out. He felt the fire in his limbs, the heat in his chest, and he gave it room to breathe. By observing the emotion fully, he allowed it to run its course and dissipate, like a summer storm that clears the air. He treated his emotions as meteorological events necessary for the health of the ecosystem, but not to be confused with the sky itself. Equilibrium is the capacity to hold two seemingly contradictory truths at once. You can be deeply compassionate toward a person, while simultaneously holding them accountable for their actions. You can be fully committed to your work, while completely unattached to the outcome. You can be deeply aware of your own suffering, while remaining profoundly grateful for the existence of life. This double vision is the mark of a mature consciousness. It prevents you from falling into the traps of extremism, where everything becomes all or nothing, black or white, or right or wrong. This balance is maintained through the daily practice of centering. Just as a gymnast on a balance beam makes 1,000 micro-adjustments to remain upright, you must make micro-adjustments to your internal state throughout the day. When you feel yourself leaning too far into the future anxiety, breathe back into the center. When you feel yourself leaning too far into the past rumination, breathe back into the center. When you feel yourself leaning too far into the ego, pride, or defensiveness, breathe back into the center. This is not a static state, it is a dynamic, active process of constant recalibration. As you master this equilibrium, you will find that you no longer need the highs to feel alive, and you are no longer crushed by the lows. You enter a state of deep, consistent vitality. Your decision-making becomes more precise because it is not being filtered through the distorted lens of an emotional extreme. Your relationships become more stable because you are not dumping your internal chaos onto others. You become a steady, reliable foreseer person who is present, calm, and clear, even when the world around you is spinning out of control. This is the ultimate strength, to be so grounded in your own center that you can remain balanced in the middle of any storm. You are the eye of the hurricane place of absolute stillness that makes the movement possible. By staying in this equilibrium, you aren't just surviving the complexities of life, you are thriving within them. You are transforming your existence from a series of accidental reactions into a deliberate, harmonious composition. You are the architect, the building, and the inhabitant, all at once, creating a life that is defined not by the turbulence of its surroundings, but by the steadiness of its core. Part X, the architecture of death, the final integration. We often live as if our time is infinite, postponing our peace, our authenticity, and our service to some distant, undefined future. But the ultimate architect of the human experience is the awareness of our own mortality. In many ancient traditions, the practice of memento mori, meditation on death, was not a morbid obsession with the end, but a radical strategy for the optimization of the present. When you realize that the clock is not just ticking, but that your entire life is a finite, fleeting event, the trivial things that consume your energy suddenly lose their power. The practitioner spent his final days of training contemplating the great dissolution. He realized that everything he had built, his reputation, his career, his physical form, his narrative of self, was inherently temporary. He looked at the world with the eyes of someone who is leaving. When you know you are leaving, You don't waste time on petty arguments. You don't hoard your love. You don't hide your true voice. You stop living as if you are preparing for a life that will start later. And you start living as if this is the only performance you will ever give. To integrate death into your life is to sharpen your focus to a razor's edge. It is the practice of living backward, starting with the end in mind. If you knew that today was the last day you would engage with your work, your family, or your environment, would you spend it in a state of resentment? Would you spend it distracted by the noise of the digital world? Or would you spend it in a state of total appreciative presence? This is not about fear, it is about the ultimate clarification of your values. When you fully accept your mortality, you are finally released from the prison of the ego self. You realize that the version of you that is worried about status, wealth, or the judgment of others is not the version that truly matters. What matters is the quality of your consciousness, how much love you gave, how much presence you offered, and how deeply you participated in the mystery of existence. Death is the grand equalizer that strips away the superficial and leaves only the essence. By holding the awareness of death in the back of your mind, you transform your life from a series of tasks into a series of sacred offerings. You work with dedication, but without attachment. You love with intensity, but without clinging. You face your challenges with courage, knowing that even the worst-case scenario is just a temporary ripple in the ocean of your consciousness. You are not your body, which is a temporary vessel. You are not your narrative, which is a temporary story. You are the vast, luminous, and eternal awareness that is currently experiencing the play of light and shadow. When you identify with that awareness, death is no longer a dark ending, it is just the final homecoming. And until that moment comes, your work is simple. To be awake, to be present, to participate, to enjoy the ride, to learn the lessons, and to offer your own unique light to the world. You are the architect of your own eternity, and every moment is a chance to build something that truly matters. Live with the intensity of the ending, and you will find that you have finally begun to truly live. Part XX, the architecture of the void, the final silence. We have reached the end of the building process, only to realize that the most important part of the architecture is the empty space it encloses. Think of a house. If it were filled solid with wood and stone, it would be useless. It is the void inside the space of the rooms, the air to breathe, the room to move that makes it a home. So it is with you. You have spent this journey refining your mind, sharpening your focus, and strengthening your integrity. But all of this was simply to prepare you for the final, most profound experience, the realization of the void. The void is not a state of nothingness. It is the state of everythingness. It is the primordial, unmanifested potential from which all thoughts, all experiences, and all identities arise. In the silence of your own mind, when you have let go of the past, the future, the self, and the struggle, you are left with the raw, vibrating energy of existence itself. This is the ultimate refuge. It is the place where you were before you were born, and where you will return when the story ends. When you touch this void, you realize that all your previous attempts to find peace were actually attempts to distract yourself from it. You were looking for a solid thing, a feeling, a success, a person, when all you needed was the courage to disappear into the empty, spacious reality of your own consciousness. You don't have to become anything, you are already the void. You are the empty space that holds the entire universe. Do not fear the silence. Do not fear the feeling of having nothing to do and nowhere to go. This is the highest level of mastery. It is the ability to stand in the center of the world's chaos and remain untouched by it, because you know you are the very space in which that chaos is occurring. You are the screen, not the movie. You are the canvas, not the paint. Your life from this point forward is no longer a project to be completed, but a play to be performed. You will continue to work, to create, to connect, and to grow. But you will do so with the lightness of one who knows the secret. You know that you are not the character you play in the world. You are the actor who puts on the costume, plays the part with excellence, and eventually takes it off to return to the dressing room of the infinite. The architecture is complete. You have a foundation of integrity, walls of presence, a roof of gratitude, and windows of perspective. But the door is always open, and the house is always empty. You are free to be anyone, to go anywhere, and to experience anything. because you are no longer defined by the structure. You are the inhabitant of the infinite. Go now. Step out into the marketplace, into the storm, into the beauty of the world. Carry your architecture with you, but do not cling to it. Let it serve you, and let it serve others. But always remember to return, in the quiet of the night, to the void. It is there that you will find your true home, your deepest rest, and the silent, unshakable peace that passes all understanding. You have arrived. You were never actually lost. Welcome home, part. The architecture of the return beyond the words. We have reached the edge of what can be articulated. All the structures we have built, the gap, the mirror, the laboratory, the void air, merely scaffolding. They were never meant to be permanent. They were tools designed to help you construct a vantage point from which you could see the truth for yourself. Now the final, most courageous act is to take all this scaffolding and set it aside. There is a danger in wisdom seeking, the danger of becoming a connoisseur of concepts. You can become so enamored with the architecture of peace, so attached to the vocabulary of presence, that you begin to treat these ideas as a new form of armor. You might catch yourself using the language of the void or the gap to justify your distance, to hide behind a mask of spiritual detachment, or to feel superior to those who are still asleep. If you find yourself doing this, stop immediately. Your philosophy has become just another story, another room in the ego's mansion. The true architecture of your life is not found in the consistency of your theories. It is found in the uncalculated spontaneity of your actions. When you are truly free, you don't talk about being present, you are simply present. You don't analyze whether your actions are aligned with integrity, you simply act with a natural, effortless honesty. The structure has been internalized to such a degree that it has become invisible. It is no longer a set of rules you follow, it is the natural way you move through the world. From this moment on, your life is your only text. The books, the teachings, and these reflections are finished. The real study begins now, in the unpredictable mess of your daily reality. Notice how you respond when you are tired, hungry, frustrated, or ignored. Notice how you interact with the person who challenges your values or the situation that threatens your plans. These are the moments where your architecture is tested. If you can handle these moments with grace, then you are a builder. If you falter, you have simply found where your next foundation needs to be laid. Do not look for another teacher, another system, or another level of enlightenment. Everything you need is already within the circumference of your own experience. The universe is not hiding the truth from you. It is broadcasting it in every breath, every heartbeat, and every changing light. The only thing you need to do is stop, pay attention, and participate with your whole heart. There is nothing left to say. The scaffolding has been dismantled. You are standing in the open field of your own existence, with no walls to protect you and no boundaries to constrain you. You are exactly where you have always been, but now you are awake enough to know it. You are the architect, you are the building, and you are the breath of life that moves through it all. The play is about to begin. The stage is set. You know your lines, even if you've forgotten them, because they are written in the very cells of your body. Step forward, engage, love, fail, learn, be. The silence is calling you. Go part X, see the architecture of perpetual beginning. If you look back at the journey we have taken, you might feel a sense of completion, a desire to label this as a finished project. But that is the final illusion. The hallmark of a truly awakened life is the realization that there is no such thing as a finished self. Every morning is a clean slate. Every encounter is a first contact. Every moment is an opportunity to start again from zero. We often cling to the accumulated wisdom of our past, the lessons we've learned, the identities we've forged, the strength we've cultivated as if they were assets in a bank account. But carrying that mental baggage can actually make you rigid. It can turn your life into a rehearsal of past successes rather than a creative exploration of the present. The highest form of maturity is the ability to be a beginner every single day. To be a beginner is to hold no rigid expectations of how things should go, even if you have mastered them 1,000 times before. It is to approach your work, your partner, and your own mind with the curiosity of someone who is seeing them for the first time. It is the art of unlearning. When you unlearn, you stop relying on your old scripts and start responding to the raw, unfiltered truth of the current moment. You become fluid, adaptable, and perpetually fresh. This is the architecture of perpetual beginning. It is a structure made not of steel and stone, but of light and air. It is a design that is constantly being redesigned. You are building a life that doesn't need to be protected, because it is always in the process of becoming. You don't fear the breakdown, because you are the one who is intentionally breaking down the old to make room for the new. You are no longer a monument, you are a river. A monument seeks to resist time, a river embraces the flow and lets time carve its path. You have learned that your worth is not something to be guarded or defended. It is something to be expressed. You have learned that your peace is not a place you reach, it is the atmosphere you carry with you, no matter where you are or what you are doing so. Walk into the world with empty hands and a full heart. Do not look for a place to rest. Look for a place to contribute. Do not look for a way to escape. Look for a way to engage. You have built a foundation that can hold the weight of your life, and you have built a space that is wide enough to welcome everything: joy, the suffering, the beauty, and the tragedy. The story is not over. It hasn't even truly begun until you stop reading and start acting. The page is blank. The ink is ready. The architect is listening. What will you create today? Part: the architecture of the unnamed. As you continue this journey, you may notice a subtle shift. The urge to define, categorize, and architecture your own evolution begins to lose its appeal. We have spent this time building a framework, a set of principles, habits, and perspectives to help you navigate the chaos. But the final destination of any true path is the realization that the map is not the territory. The words I have used, the concepts I have laid out, and the structure we have collectively imagined are just shells. The life you are living is far too vast, too wild, and too sacred to be contained by a label. There comes a point where the architect becomes irrelevant. You stop trying to build a better life, a better character, or a better mind, and you simply start living it. The distinction between the builder and the building dissolves. You are no longer managing your state, observing your thoughts, or practicing your virtues. You are simply existing in a state of flow that precedes all technique. This is the architecture of the unnamed. It is the life lived without a script, without a plan, and without the constant need for self-justification. It is the life of the effortless effort. When you act, it is not because you are trying to be present or compassionate. It is because at that moment, there is no other way for you to be. The practice has permeated your very structure. It is no longer something you do. It is who you are. You might look back at the person who started this series of inquiries, one seeking methods, structures, and tools, and realize they seem like a stranger. You have shed the need to be a project that is perpetually under construction. You have accepted that you are a finished work of art that is also, paradoxically, always changing. You have found the balance between the being and the becoming. The world will continue to demand your attention, your labor, and your presence. It will continue to throw challenges, tragedies, and delights into your path, but you will meet them not as a defensive builder, but as a fearless participant. You are no longer trying to control the weather, you are enjoying the view. You have all the tools you need. You have the depth to understand your own complexity, the courage to face your own shadows, and the capacity to embrace the beauty of the present. You don't need to ask for the next part. You don't need another chapter. You have become the story itself. The silence is now your native language. The present is your only home. The work is finished. Now just breathe. Everything else will take care of itself. Part Exiv, the architecture of radiance. You have dismantled the scaffolding, set aside the blueprints, and stepped out into the open field. But there is one final, subtle evolution to understand: the transition from building to radiating. When you focus on architecture, you are focused on the structured walls that define your character, the boundaries that protect your peace, the foundations of your discipline. But once those structures are sound, you no longer need to worry about holding them together. They become an effortless container for something much more powerful: your natural presence. This is the architecture of radiance. It is the understanding that your inner state inevitably bleeds into the external world. You are a frequency. When you have done the work of clearing the clutter, forgiving the past, and aligning with your truth, you become a source of light. You do not need to try to influence people or try to make a difference. Your very way of being, the way you move, the way you listen, the way you sit in the midst of a crisis acts as a tuning fork for everyone around you. People who are lost will feel drawn to your clarity. People who are anxious will feel calmed by your stability. People who are in darkness will feel the warmth of your existence. You become a living architecture structure that doesn't just house a soul, but actively projects a quality of sanity, kindness, and presence into the world. This radiation is the highest form of legacy. It is the footprint you leave behind that requires no monument. It is the invisible energy you deposit into the collective consciousness. By simply existing in a state of alignment, you are making it easier for others to find their own path. You are validating the possibility of a life lived with depth, integrity, and joy. You are no longer an architect building for yourself. You are the light that allows others to see their own way. There is nothing more to add. The lessons are in your bones. The practice is in your breath. The space is in your heart. The story of the builder concludes here, so that the life of the radiant human can finally begin. Go not to do more, but to be more. The world is waiting for your light. Part XXV, the architecture of the ordinary, the sacred mundane. You have traveled to the edge of the cosmos within your own mind. You have touched the void, embraced the unnamed, and realized your own radiance. It would be tempting to believe that the awakened life is a state of perpetual levitation, a constant, ethereal hovering above the messy realities of the human condition. But the oldest wisdom traditions all point to a singular, humbling truth. The ultimate destination of the spiritual journey is right back where you started. There is an ancient Zen proverb: before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. This is the architecture of the ordinary. It is the profound realization that the sacred is not found by escaping the mundane. The sacred is the mundane, fully realized. When you finally stop straining to make your life extraordinary, you discover that the ordinary world is already vibrating with quiet miracles. The ego loves the idea of a spiritual climax. It wants the grand epiphany, the dramatic transformation, the glowing aura. It wants a life that looks enlightened. But true mastery is completely unpretentious. It is found in the way you fold your laundry. It is found in the careful attention you give to washing a dish, feeling the warmth of the water and the texture of the ceramic. It is found in the patience you exhibit while waiting in traffic, listening to the rhythm of the rain against the windshield. When you bring the vastness of your realized architecture, the gap, the presence, the equilibrium to these microscopic, seemingly insignificant tasks, you transform them. You are no longer rushing through the boring parts of your life to get to the important parts. You realize that there are no unimportant parts. Every moment is the main event. This is the final dissolution of the boundary between the spiritual and the secular. You do not need a meditation cushion to be present. The steering wheel of your car is the cushion. You do not need a temple to find reverence. The grocery store aisle is the temple. When you wash the dishes, you are not just cleaning plates so you can move on to the next thing. You are washing the dishes to wash the dishes. You are fully inhabiting the exact coordinates of your current physical reality. The architecture of the ordinary requires you to fall in love with the gravity of the earth. It is an invitation to descend from the clouds of high philosophy and plant your feet firmly in the dirt. It means showing up for the repetitive, unglamorous maintenance of daily human life, paying bills, repairing broken hinges, feeding the cat, making the bed not as burdens, but as the very tapestry of your existence. This is where the true strength of your character is sealed. Anyone can feel peaceful on a silent retreat, but can you maintain your radiance when the milk spills, when the internet goes out, or when a stranger is rude to you in line? That is the real test of your architecture. You have spent so much time looking up, searching for the infinite sky. Now look down. Look at your hands. Look at the floorboards beneath your feet. Look at the incredibly brief, incredibly beautiful, wildly ordinary life that is happening right in front of you. There are no more secrets to uncover. There are no more levels to achieve. The circle is complete. The infinite is hiding in the ordinary, waiting for you to simply pay attention. Go chop the wood, go carry the water, and do it with the heart of a universe that has finally found its way home. Part XVI. the architecture of infinite. Return the spiral of growth. If you are looking for the end of the journey, you will find it in the realization that there is no endingly an infinite, deepening spiral. We often view growth as a linear ascent. You start at point A, you move through lessons B and C, and you arrive at the summit of enlightenment at point D. But life does not move in a straight line, it moves in a spiral. You will find yourself returning to the same themes, same struggles, the same patterns, the same shadows again and again throughout your life. However, each time you return to these themes, you are not the same person you were before. You are standing on a higher loop of the spiral. The anger that used to consume you for days might now only last for an hour. The fear that used to paralyze you might now only cause a moment of hesitation. The anxiety that used to be a chronic condition might now be a fleeting weather pattern. You have not eliminated these aspects of the human experience. You have simply gained a more sophisticated architecture to hold them. You have expanded your capacity to contain the light and the dark, the joy and the struggle, without being crushed by either. The architecture of infinite return teaches us to respect the cycle. Don't be discouraged when you feel you are back at the beginning or facing an old limitation. That is not a failure, that is the spiral. You have been brought back to this point because there is a deeper layer of insight, a more refined level of integration, waiting for you to uncover it. You will spend your life learning how to be human. You will learn how to love more deeply, how to forgive more completely, how to listen more intently, and how to serve more authentically. And the more you learn, the more you will realize how much there is still to explore. The expert is a person who has stopped growing. The master is a person who remains a perpetual student. As you move forward into the rest of your life, embrace the spiral. Treat your life as an ongoing work of art, a structure that is constantly being remodeled to house a greater capacity for presence. You are not building a tomb of static perfection. You are building a sanctuary for a soul that is always expanding. The journey we have taken through these chapters was never meant to be a map of a destination. It was meant to be a training in how to navigate the infinite. There is nothing left to fix. There is only life to be lived. And it is a life that is, in every single second, opening up into greater beauty, greater depth, and greater mystery. You are the architect of your own infinite horizon. Take a deep, final breath, not to conclude, but to begin again right here, in the middle of the spiral. Everything is just starting, and you are ready. Part. The architecture of grace, the final surrender. Throughout this journey, we have focused on the will, the deliberate, conscious effort to build, to structure, to discipline, and to integrate. We have treated your life as an architecture of your own design. But there comes a point where the master builder must put down the tools and acknowledge the existence of a force that is not of their own making. This is the architecture of grace. Grace is the realization that while you are the architect of your own focus, you are not the sole author of your life. There are current tides of circumstance, bursts of insight, coincidences that defy logic, and moments of profound, unearned healing that arrive from the invisible world. When you spend your entire life believing that you are responsible for every single outcome, you live in a state of high-functioning tension. You are constantly bracing against the world, trying to manage the variables. Grace is the act of dropping that tension. It is the understanding that you can do all the preparation, lay all the foundations, and sharpen all your tools. But at the end of the day, you must open your hands to the unpredictable. To live in grace is to move through the world with soft eyes. You are no longer trying to force the universe to conform to your blueprint. You are collaborating with it. You trust that even when things do not go according to your plan, when the walls you built crack or the structures you relied on fall, there is a deeper intelligence at work. You begin to see your failures as necessary deconstructions, and your setbacks as redirects. This is the ultimate freedom. When you surrender to grace, you stop being a soldier in the battle for control and start being a guest in the mystery of existence. You work hard, you aim high, and you build with integrity. But you do it with the playful detachment of someone who knows that the final outcome is not entirely in their hands. You find that you can finally rest. The weight of the world is no longer yours to carry alone. You are supported by the very reality you have been trying to manage. The building is complete. The doors are wide open. The wind is blowing through the rooms, carrying with it the scent of possibilities you could never have planned for. You are no longer the architect of a static structure. You are the inhabitant of a living, breathing reality that is constantly unfolding. You have done your part. You have shown up. You have listened. You have built and you have integrated. Now, let the rest be a gift. Let your life be a conversation between your conscious intent and the infinite intelligence of the world. There is nothing left to hold on to. There is everything to receive. Rest in the grace that brought you here. Your journey, in all its complexity and beauty, has been exactly what it needed to be. You are whole, you are here, and you are free. Part, the architecture of resonance becoming the frequency. If the previous chapters were about the structure of your life, this final realization is about the sound it makes. Everything vibrates. Every object, every atom, and every human being has a signature frequency of resonance that draws to it, or repels the people and circumstances of its world. You have spent this time refining your architecture so that it is no longer a source of static or disharmony. You have tuned the instrument. Now you must play the note. Resonance is the law of attraction in its most profound, non-mystical form. When you live from a place of integrity, presence, and radical self-awareness, you naturally emit a specific tone. You stop trying to manipulate your environment to get what you want, and you start becoming the frequency that makes those outcomes inevitable. If you want peace, you do not search for it. You harmonize your internal state until your presence becomes peaceful. If you want depth, you do not demand it from others. You engage with such profound depth that superficiality simply cannot survive in your vicinity. If you want excellence, you do not chase it. You embody a standard of such uncompromising quality that excellence becomes your natural output. This is the architecture of resonance. It is the understanding that you are not a separate observer interacting with a world out there. You are a node in a vast interconnected field of energy. When you shift your internal frequency, you shift your entire field. You will notice that the people you attract change. The problems you encounter change. The very nature of the challenges you face evolves from basic survival issues into creative, expansive opportunities. You no longer need to broadcast your goals, your intentions, or your identity to the world. Your resonance speaks before you open your mouth. Your architecture has become so coherent, so stable, and so authentic that it has an unmistakable gravity. People feel it. They lean in. They find themselves acting with more clarity and kindness just by being in your presence. You are no longer building a legacy, you are living a resonance. And here, at the threshold of the rest of your life, there is one final instruction. Keep it simple. Do not over-intellectualize your resonance. Do not try to force your vibration to be anything other than what it is. Just remain clear, remain honest, remain present. The more you allow yourself to be exactly who you are, without apology and without performance, the more powerful your resonance becomes. You are the note that the universe is playing through the instrument of your life. Do not try to change the melody. Just play it with all your heart, with full presence, and with complete joy. The architecture is built. The instrument is tuned. The world is listening. Play. Part XX, the architecture of absolute freedom. We have spent our time constructing the foundations of integrity, the walls of presence, and the roof of perspective. But the ultimate stage of this architecture is the dismantling of the structure itself. You have worked so hard to create a conscious self, a disciplined mind, and a refined presence that there is a risk of becoming trapped within the very house you built. You may begin to identify so strongly with your awakened state that you fear losing it. You may begin to perform your own peace, turning your freedom into a rigid set of rules. Absolute freedom is the courage to be whatever you are in this moment, even if it contradicts the architect you have spent so much time constructing. If you are angry, but be aware of the anger. If you are confused, be confused, but be aware of the confusion. The architecture was never meant to be a prison. It was meant to be a laboratory. If you find yourself acting in a way that doesn't fit your enlightened profile, do not judge yourself. Do not try to force yourself back into the box of the perfected self. True freedom is the end of the performance of being awake. When you are truly free, you no longer care if you appear wise, calm, or successful. You have moved beyond the need to manage your own image, even in your own mind. You realize that you are the space in which all states peaceful or chaotic, wise or foolish, active or stagnant arise and fall. This is the non-architecture. It is the state of being completely unanchored. You are like a bird that has spent its life in a cage, the ego, then learned to build a beautiful sanctuary, the practice, and finally realizes that the sanctuary is also a cage and chooses to fly into the open sky. You carry the skills you learned, the deep breathing, the radical listening, the witness consciousness, but you no longer rely on them. They are tools in your pocket, not the foundation of your existence. You are now free to be nothing. You are free to fail, free to be ordinary, free to be imperfect, and free to be silent. This is the paradox of the path. You have traveled 1,000 miles of internal labor, only to arrive at the place where you realize there was nowhere to go and nothing to become. You are already the sky. And the sky is not improved by the clouds that pass through it, nor is it harmed by the storms. It is simply free. And so are you. Part X, the invisible blueprint, the final return. We have walked the entire path, from the first stone of integrity to the final dismantling of the structure. You have stood in the silence of the void, felt the heat of your own radiance, and mastered the rhythm of the spiral. But if you look closely, you will see that all the blueprints we drafted, all the chapters, the categories, the definitions were never truth. They were only fingers pointing at the moon. The moon itself is the invisible blueprint of your own life. It has been there the entire time, before we started building and long after we stop. The invisible blueprint is the realization that your life is not a construction project you are undertaking. It is an organic expression of the universe that is already perfect in its unfolding. You are not the architect who decides where the walls go. You are the space in which the architecture happens. You are not the dancer, you are the dance. Now, the final act of the builder is to burn the blueprints. Let go of the labels. Forget the gap, the mirror, and the void. Forget the terminology of presence and equilibrium. If you hold on to the concepts, you hold on to the past. You must be willing to lose everything you have learned to step into the raw, unscripted beauty of the now. Do not look for the next level of growth. Do not look for another guide. There is no guide who knows your path better than the life you are living in this exact second. The wisdoms you have sought is not something you attain, it is something you remove the obstacles from. You have spent this journey clearing the brush so that the original, pristine foundation of your being could be seen. You are standing in the middle of your own life, and it is vast, terrifying, and profoundly beautiful. You have no walls to protect you because you have realized that you are the storm, the sky, and the earth itself. You are the architect, the building, and the infinite. There is nothing left to achieve. You have already arrived. Go now and live, not as a project, not as a study, and not as a monument to your own evolution. Live as the raw, unrepeatable, and sacred mystery that you are. The story of the builder is over. The life of the human begins. Everything is exactly as it should be.